The 2025 draft has come and gone. We've got some winners and losers. Which teams help themselves set up a foundation for potentially a championship future on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Love our everydayers. Thanks for sticking with us throughout the NFL draft, which is always a really fun time of year. And we're going to continue breaking down all of your football teams here post-draft, winners and losers today. We're going to go division by division, breaking down every single class here in the coming weeks on Peacock and Williamson. And if you're new to the show, welcome. Subscribe up on YouTube. Helps us out tremendously. So please hit that subscribe button if you are watching or listening on YouTube or anywhere you are listening to this podcast. And today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by the 2025 all-new Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada draft pick of the week later in the show. So, Matt, by the way, did you notice my new NFL draft cap, locked on style, showed up in the mail?
I did notice.
For the day 2 and 3 of the draft here. So I'm rocking that.
I dig it.
Winners and losers. We got to start, I think, with the Cleveland Browns, and we're going to bring up some teams that aren't necessarily winners or losers, but just some really interesting teams here that finished their draft classes. And obviously, there was the storyline, and I'm not going to dwell on the Shedeur Sanders stuff. It is pretty wild. Like, it's not surprising that maybe he didn't fall out of the first round. We were talking about it after day one. Steelers coming up at pick 21. And Matt, you're like, yeah, you know what? Even if Shedeur's there, I get the vibe that they probably drafted defensive lineman instead of Shedeur Sanders, which is exactly what happened for the Steelers. And then you start looking at all these teams, and all of a sudden, those same teams that needed quarterback all drafted other quarterbacks. And now Shedeur Sanders is in a free fall. It was like Aaron Rodgers' 2005 draft times 1,000, and he ends up getting drafted by the Browns finally at the top of the 5th round. And it's really interesting. And I saw this thrown out there by somebody on Twitter, and I don't remember who. But the idea was essentially, okay, look, the Browns drafted Shedeur Sanders with the 6th pick in the 5th round. If you just mixed all this up, and instead of the Browns drafting Shedeur in the 5th round, what if after the trade down, the Browns would have drafted Mason Graham at 5 and then Shedeur Sanders at the 1st pick in the 2nd round instead of Carson Schwessinger? And then they would have drafted Schwessinger 3 picks later with their other 2nd round pick. And then they'd have drafted Fannin, and then they'd have drafted Dylan Sampson. And, they drafted 2 running backs in this class. And then in the 5th round, they'd have drafted Dylan Gabriel. If you just stacked it differently, everyone would have been like, yeah, okay, makes sense. Good job, Browns. You held your water. You got Shedeur Sanders, right? But instead, this is all shaken up, and it's this massive story. And in the end, they got the same haul they would have in that case. And except for they were able to, throw in a Quinshon Judkins in there. And so Judkins and Sampson in this class, I don't think Dylan Gabriel is a better NFL prospect than Shedeur Sanders. So that is like, I would love to hear the explanation for that one. I think Dylan Gabriel at best is going to be a long-term backup. And I even watched his film. He's like, 25 years old. Is like, this is a CFL quarterback like that. I don't get that. So you must have really not liked Shedeur Sanders. And now you just hope you get the chip on your shoulder, Shedeur Sanders. And Mason Graham, I think we look at first of all, and I love Carson Schwessinger. I love Quinshon Judkins. I think I'd rather have Travion Henderson than good Judkins where they drafted him. Harold Fannon's an interesting prospect in the top of the 3rd round. I think he went at the right spot. He's just such an oddball prospect to tie it in. So in the end, I think they got a lot of good football players, the Cleveland Browns did. And I think a lot of high floor players, including Sanders, for where you got him in the 5th round. Like, he's at least backup quarterback capable in the NFL talent-wise, right? And so in the end, I ended up liking the draft. And the question becomes, is Mason Graham a Pro Bowler, an All-Pro? Is Carson Schwessinger a Pro Bowler, an All-Pro? Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson, do you have a dynamic backfield again? Is Harold Fannin the 1,500-yard receiver in the NFL that he was in college, right? So this could also go really big. So high floor and some ceiling to this class for the Browns.
Ooh, we don't disagree much, but we're going to disagree. And first off, it was my suggestion. So, let's start with the Browns. Let's start with Sanders. I hate that I feel like we have to do that, but I wanted to attack it from a somewhat different perspective than most are, that, he's falling. Because frankly, we should be talking about Cam Ward. Cam Ward is a really good quarterback prospect. And it's like no one ever brought him up after you knew he was going to be the first pick, chisel it in stone. We don't even talk about Cam Ward. We talk about this guy who goes in the 5th round. So the last time you and I talked was Friday. So we only knew one pick. I mean, we had 32 picks in the book. And obviously your perspective on the entire draft changes dramatically. Friday and Saturday, a lot more. It takes shape. And when the Browns made the trade and then subsequently took Mason Graham, I 100% understood it. I thought, man, your lines of scrimmage need a lot of work. You're not really equipped to maximize what Hunter brings. And boy, did the Jags give you a lot. You might have 2 top 10 picks, 2 top 15 picks, and really go get your quarterback next year. Get out of this terrible place you put yourself in with Deshaun Watson. And I hated everything they did since then, to be honest with you. And I don't really dislike the players. And to show that it's not really even a Sanders bias thing, that's my favorite pick they made. I mean, to get him in the 5th round, and I urge people to even look at my Twitter feed as I was driving to the Steelers facility on Saturday morning. 3 rounds are in the books. I said, hey, 4th round Steelers, I'll take Shedeur here. I never thought he was a 1st-round player. I thought he was a day 2 player. And if there's shenanigans involved and you get him in round 5, you may get a good quarterback for the price. And as Mike Tomlin says, he says, that's why I'm well compensated. You deal with this stuff. That's a head coach's job. You CEO this stuff. My problem with the Browns draft, first off, I don't love Graham, but you and I were talking off the air that if you pick 4 or 5 in this draft, you're really in no man's land. There isn't a great answer. So we can agree on, I don't think Graham's going to be a bad player. I think he's a good scheme fit. He's got a high floor. He's a culture developer. Cool. I see Campbell the same way. I just don't see a lot of Pro Bowls. But what I hate, go ahead.
No. Keep going.
What I hate and hate is they're supposed to be a really analytically driven organization. They took an off-the-ball linebacker, 2 running backs, 2 backup quarterbacks, and a backup tight end. I mean, I would have taken 5 offensive linemen and prepare for that quarterback next year and Shedeur. The Gabriel pick makes no sense. I don't dislike Judkins, Schlesinger. I don't really like Fannin, but I would have drafted O-line and D-line galore. And I just don't understand. These are all the cherries on top. The structure of the team is no better.
I mean, they started with a defensive lineman, but in a really
that
deep
was a great start.
line class, they didn't draft any other defensive linemen.
Right.
They drafted, by my count, 0 offensive linemen.
Right. 2 running backs, backup tight end, 2 quarterbacks, all the cherry on top positions. I would have taken Membo, but Graham, I understand. And then I went O-line like crazy. Their O-line's a disaster. When they were good, it was because their guards were good and they had a good line coach. And you're trying to prepare the nest for the next quarterback. I don't understand the philosophy after the trade.
So it was funny. Their best pick was Shedeur in the 5th round. Their worst pick was Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, exactly. Why do one instead of the other,
It's just a weird class. It was just a weird class, and it is hard to see the vision with the Browns. And in the end, will they look back and be like, "Oh gosh, we should have just taken the gold jacket guy"? But here's the thing: is I think the right move trading down in the end, and it's usually the right move trading down. But if Travis Hunter hits on the ultimate upside, which is going to be tough, in the end, it's you can't count him as 2 players because he can't. You're not going to physically be able to play full time on both sides. And if he does, then we're talking about a guy in Canton probably, but
right.
You got to trade down, and I like it. But
he's not Randy Moss and Deion Sanders rolled into one.
Dude, you know what? We're going to go to the Patriots next. Can we skip to the Jaguars then, just to finish that conversation up? Because did you hear the post-draft or at least post-first round press conference with Gladstone, the new GM of the Jaguars?
I did not. I'm on the air the whole time. I don't really get a chance to see other media stuff.
We need a little bit of time here. We're going to talk about that. Jaguars coming up next. The New England Patriots had another interesting class. I think it's a similar conversation to what happened with the Cleveland Browns there. More foundational for me for the Pats. Cardinals. Everyone universally loves it because they got quote-unquote value. But there's a downside to the Cardinals draft and some more winners and losers from the 2025 NFL draft. Next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by Gametime. I just used Gametime yesterday. It was Little League Day at the San Francisco Giants game. And after my son's Little League baseball game, we went over to the ferry, went on into the city. And on the ferry ride to the city, I knew that I could go to Gametime and get some last-minute tickets. It was a little overcast. It rained the night before. I felt like I was going to scare some folks away from the ballpark potentially. And $27, got some phenomenal seats, 8th row back. And so the family took in a baseball game. And if anybody watched the highlights or is a San Francisco Giants fan, you know that the game ended also in a Little League home run. It was a walk-off bottom of the ninth.
Wow.
Little League home run. Just a little chopper in the infield. Pitcher throws the ball away. Runners run around the bases. They throw the ball away again. Giants win the game. So Little League game in the morning. Walk-off Little League home run at a major league stadium for awesome value tickets. All thanks to Gametime, and Gametime makes it fast and easy to get NBA playoff tickets as well, because even when demand is high, prices on the app go down, actually, the closer it gets to tip-off or first pitch, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60% off. Last-minute deals, all-in pricing, so go check it out for yourself. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So the new GM of the Jaguars comes from the Rams, and he has learned some hubris. And this guy's in his mid-30s, right? Gladstone. And I did not like his post-draft press conference because he was very proud of himself.
Really?
And I think it's really important not to brag about how awesome you just did in the NFL draft on draft day, because we know that half of the guys you just drafted are going to suck, essentially, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he was bragging about himself and like, this is a statement. This is how we're going to do things. And it's like, well, make sure you did the right move. Like, trading for trading and being all like, I'm a gambler and I'm shooting from the hip and this is how things are going to be when I'm in town. Okay, dude, slow down.
New sheriff in town. Wyatt Earp just walked in. Yeah.
You've done one thing as GM of the Jaguars, so let's slow down. And maybe it worked out great. Maybe you had a phenomenal draft class, but Caleb Ransaw out of Tulane in the 3rd round. You didn't pick until the 24th pick in the 3rd. Caleb Ransaw out of Tulane, corner. Wyatt Milam, who's a guard out of West Virginia in the 3rd round. Bashal Tutins, speedy running back in round 4. Jack Kaiser in round 4. They had a lot of later round picks here, so it was a very Rams-like thing where it's all of a sudden making a big move, but then a lot of late picks as well. Jonah Monheim out of USC center. LaQuint Allen. Jalen McLeod, Auburn linebacker. So a couple linebackers, some interior offensive linemen. It's like Travis Hunter he's got the weight of the world on his back now after the comments he made and after this draft class, because you better have found a lot of depth with these guys that you drafted outside of Travis Hunter, and he better be a star, because you're already patting yourself on the back. And to be honest with you, outside of Travis Hunter, Milam I think is a starter. I think Tutin's probably a better backup running back. Kaiser could take or leave. Like you got one starter in this draft. Good job. Maybe 2 starters in this draft, right?
Yeah, and his press conference or whatever aside, which you don't like to hear, like, oh, I just figured this whole thing out. The Jags have been a disaster for 20 years, but I'm the Wyatt Earp comes to town and everything's better.
Right.
And I love Hunter, and I understand the move, and I still have a lot of faith in their new head coach as well as Trevor Lawrence. So I think the arrow's going up on the organization. Couple notes from the draft, though. I like the Milam pick a lot because I think he'll be a starting offensive lineman, probably a guard. Good. I thought they would go back to the trenches more, and maybe that's just a theme with me. I mean, the Browns had the same conversation. You get the splash at the second pick. Now go get me the steak and potatoes of it all, because only one offensive lineman of note. I do think Tootin will be in the mix and ATN won't be. Back-to-back linebackers, yeah. And I found it interesting that their next pick after Hunter was a corner. Does that mean we think Hunter is going to be wide receiver first? And have they announced that, or are they just going to say he does both and he has no weakness?
It does feel that way.
Yeah,
so we'll see. But in the end, with he might be right, and it might be awesome, and Gladstone is the next Wyatt Earp of the NFL. But at the same time, you got to listen to the interview first of all, or the statement he made. It's what's the best way to put it? It's sort of like it's a word salad. First of all, it sounds like, hey, that was awesome, and that's probably something similar to what you said to get you the job in the job interview. It sounded like he was still in his job interview, and it's like, okay, you don't have to sell how impressive you are anymore. Like, now you're on the job, so do the job.
Okay, yeah. Now it's time to get the nose of the grindstone and do the tough things.
And obviously, it's all about Travis Hunter with that draft class for the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's not all about one player for the New England Patriots.
No.
And I know we kind of disagree a little bit on Will Campbell and his value with the number 4 pick in the draft, but this was a foundational draft for the Patriots. And in the end, I really like the draft class they came away with. How many, what was it, 10, 11 picks they had? They had 3 7th rounders. They had 2 4th rounders, 2 3rd rounders, and obviously the 4th pick in the draft. And look, I would have loved to trade down, but it's about culture. And I think they got one of the highest floor players in the draft in Will Campbell. And I think he's going to be a really good player. And, I think a little bit too much was made about him as a tackle. I think he's going to start at left tackle, and he's going to be a left tackle. And maybe he gets beat a time or two, but it's not like his tape is littered with him getting beat. He just got beat a couple times. You're like, okay, maybe arm length could be his biggest weakness, but his tape is still awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a culture setter, I think, for a new regime in New England. For that reason, I like it. I love Travion Henderson in the second round. Still a little high for running back for me, but I just thought he was potentially the second best running back in this class. Kyle Williams in the 3rd round. Look out for him. He might be their best wide receiver, by the way. He is a good football player. Kyle Williams, Washington State in the 3rd round. Jared Wilson, you got a starting center, super athletic. Craig Woodson was a sleeper safety. Joshua Farmer, phenomenal value late in the 4th round. Some injury concerns there. Braden Swinson, I'm not surprised he fell in the draft because some people loved him. Can we talk about this for a second too, Matt? Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'll let you get your words.
No, bring it on.
Braden Swinson's one that everyone's like, oh, I had a 2nd round grade on him. I loved him. He's like, well, look, he was a one-dimensional designated pass rush only guy. And there was I think there was some off-field stuff too. It's like, you got to be able to get to 3rd down before you can rush the passer. And so Braden Swinson, I think, maybe he could have gone in the 4th round or even the 3rd round, but people were talking about him as like, oh, he's my 3rd edge. It's like, no, come on, man. He's designated
part-time guy. Yeah.
He will not sniff the field on early downs. And so see if you get something there. Maybe he can produce off the edge, and maybe he bounces out of the league, because a lot of those types of guys do bounce out of the league. So we'll see there. But anyway, foundational draft class is foundational is the word for the Patriots here with this draft class. Got a lot of players. I think a lot of guys are going to play a lot for them, probably early.
Super quick on Swinson, and I'm not picking him out, but to your point, 3rd, 4th, 5th round designated pass rushers, that's a tough world to live in, because TJ Watt and Bosa and Parsons don't come off the field. Are you better than those guys on 3rd down? No. And everybody's got somebody like that. You're still a number 2 at best.
And the reason the guys went in the 1st round was because they could rush the passer too.
Right. And there's a lot of good ones out there. I mean, you're okay. So on 3rd and 8, you're the 84th best pass rusher in the league. That's a hard way to live, and running that on kickoffs, so those guys should fall. I'm mostly with you on the Patriots. We don't really disagree on Campbell. I don't know who I would have picked it for. Probably Membo. They need a left tackle, not a right. And I have some concerns about Campbell in that everyone just assumes he can be Zach Martin if he kicks into guard. I'm not on that train. He's a little narrow for me. And Zach Martin's pretty damn good. Everyone assumes he'll be the best guard in the league if he kicks inside. I'm not there. But all in all, I'm with you on this draft. They made a lot of picks, and that's always going to be a big thing for me, because you're right. 50% of these names on all these lists aren't going to be around in 5 years. So make a ton of picks. And I do think they poured some concrete of the foundation that needs a lot of work. And I don't need Campbell to be Ogden, but between him and Jared Wilson, if I get 2 offensive line starters, I'm on board. I probably would not have gone running back with my next pick, but he is a good culture guy coming from a winning organization, Vrabel, Ohio State, national champions, can protect, all that stuff. I'm sure your young quarterback is happy you added Henderson, especially for the passing game. And I'm with you on Williams. Kyle Williams and Stephon Diggs compared to throwing to Polk and Baker last year. I mean, I think that's going to be light years better. I'll take Farmer in the 4th round all day. They did draft a kicker and a long snapper, but we'll let that slide.
That's the Belichick in him. Belichick,
yeah. I needed to do that. Yeah,
and they didn't have a good track record, the Patriots either, of drafting those kickers and punters and stuff. Like those guys would just bounce after a couple of years sometimes, and 4th round picks on. So at least they didn't draft them super early. And so yeah. So here's the thing. So let's say there's a long arm pass rusher that gets by Will Campbell. Well, guess what? He's going to meet Trayvon Henderson, who was maybe the best pass protecting running back in the draft. So
and it's still a heck of a lot than what was protecting May last year, who made a lot of time on his own.
Trayvon Henderson was the Patriots' best offensive lineman last year.
Right.
Protector, because at least he can pick off the guys that come through first. All right.
It's getting better, and I think May's happy with the draft, which is a good start,
Next, I want to talk about the Cardinals. Is it the great draft that everyone says? And then one team that I think had a maybe kind of a legitimately bad NFL draft. We'll get to those couple of teams and some of Matt's favorites and least favorites as well. Next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada and our pick of the week for the NFL draft. This week, we're highlighting some of the top draft picks from the NFL draft. And one selection for me that truly stood out that we just talked about, the guy who showcased the strength and power to push the New England Patriots forward as we look ahead to next season. So this week's Armada clear-cut top pick of the draft is Will Campbell for me, because he is heavy duty. He is rugged. He conquers the road with capability and confidence, and he's going to help those New England Patriots dream big and go big and help be the best friend for Drake May, their quarterback, as they go forth and conquer like the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. How about the Nissan Armada? Not only that, but the Nissan Rogue and the all-new 2025 Nissan Pathfinder as well. Just like the New England Patriots, you can go find your next big adventure. All you got to do is shop NissanUSA.com. All right. Taking a look at the Arizona Cardinals draft next year. And on paper, you say, hey, look, the Cards are going to go into this draft and they're going to get Walter Nolan and Will Johnson with their first 2 picks. They're going to follow that up with, a big defensive end or maybe a pass rushing interior tackle, maneuverable piece, Jordan Birch, continuing to build that defensive front for the Cardinals, which is a massive theme for them the last 2 off seasons. And then you got Cody Simon, linebacker out of Ohio State, corner out of Ohio State, and Denzel Burke next, Hayden Conner out of Texas, guard, and then Keaton Crawford from Nevada, safety. So a lot of defense in this draft. This could go a lot of ways because Walter Nolan Walter Nolan's a prospect, Matt, that clearly there's talent there, and he deserved to be a top 16 pick in the draft. And for that, I like the pick. And they didn't have to take him in the top 10, but there's some risk involved there. And there's questions about, does he love the game? How much is he going to work? And so, that can go a lot of ways. Will Johnson, the 15th pick in round 2, that knee must be in bad shape. And if that knee's in that bad of shape where all those teams passed on him and some teams twice, does he even does it go from being, they stole him is he going to be that player is my question. Right. So does that end up being one that haunts you? And you're like, well, we like the player, obviously, but he couldn't have an NFL career because his knee is that bad. Like, how bad is that knee that Will Johnson falls to pick 15 in the second round? So that's a little scary one. So like those 2 picks, while they could absolutely boom, they could bust as well. And Jordan Birch is like, okay, is he a tweener or is he actually versatile? And I almost lean to the tweener side because it's like, okay, he's a
negative way.
Athletic guy, but and so this draft could go very bad, even though on paper you're like, oh my God, home run draft. They got Walter Nolan and Will Johnson.
It's a great point about Johnson and his health. And I was thinking that too. I'm like, are we going to look back in this draft 4 or 5 years? Because corner is a pretty premium position. Ravel, Benjamin, Johnson, like these guys are big time talents that went even a little later than maybe we even expected. Are any of them going to hit? Or one of them going to hit? Is it going to be Caleb Farley? Where you don't even talk about the guy in 2 years? That could happen. Because, man, you need to be as twitchy and as athletic at that position. You can't be a little compromised to corner, especially as a rookie and early in your career. You're not Patrick Peterson at the end that gets by on guile and that kind of thing. I mean, you're going to get tested and you got to be in premium physical condition. I love that they were so aggressive on the defensive side. I mean, I don't love all the players, but I love the philosophy of let's just attack the defense because it's still really lacking. I was thinking about when this staff took over, 2 years ago, they had a horrible roster. And now the offense is, not complete, but it's good. They built an offense around Murray. And now the defense maybe after this is, has real starters. You're not just making stuff up on the fly. But we kind of brushed it over a couple weeks ago, but very much in a Cam Jordan, Cam Hayward kind of light. I love the Walter Nolan pick because they now have Calais Campbell.
I do like that combination. But the other thing is, do they not like their late first round pick, Darius Robinson from last year? Or maybe maybe there's some injury concerns because he did get hurt and missed a lot of the season. Did he get hurt in like week 1 or maybe in the preseason or something, right? And
early
missed almost the entire year. And he's kind of that big end Jordan Burch style. Is that like Darius Robinson insurance? They brought in Calais Campbell. They also brought in Gannon's guy Sweat from Philadelphia. Like they brought in a lot of guys. They've got a ton of dudes. Like I don't even. Maybe they just want to bring him in.
I just think it's an Eagles thing. I just think it's every shape and size. Give me every D lineman I can, and we're just going to have a million of them and bring in hockey waves. So I took it the opposite way because even when they took Robinson, I'm like, maybe he's a tweener, and I just think they don't care.
You can't have too many good defensive linemen.
And I think that's
your philosophy. I'm kind of going to just be on board with that. And, so little boomer bust draft here with all 3 of their first selections in the 2025 draft for the Arizona Cardinals. I think as far as drafts, I'm not super in on Denver Broncos. What's funny is they drafted some players I like. RJ Harvey just felt early, running back out of UCF.
For him to go ahead of Caleb Johnson shocked me.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, great pick with Caleb Johnson. I like that value where he was selected in round 3. Johnny Barron, he's a nickel, and clearly
Bryant was early too. There were better receivers on the board than Bryant.
What's funny about Pat Bryant, which is frustrating because I don't want to crush Pat Bryant the pick because I actually love Pat Bryant. I was higher out. I was like, dude, this guy Pat Bryant can play, but he runs 4.6, so he's probably going to go in the 5th round. He ends up going early in the 3rd round in front of some other receivers. And so it's like, okay, you better be sure because a slower wide receiver that can go a lot of ways. Maybe he's the next Cooper Kupp for you, and he's got toughness and he will block you. So I'm not surprised that teams liked Pat Bryant, but still felt early. And Savion Williams, like I don't even know where you're going to play him.
I thought the same thing. Like I didn't see the Barron pick coming, but I'm like, well, whoever takes him, I'm probably not going to give him a hard time because he's going to be a good football player. Again, I don't think he's going to be Dion or Woodson, but he's going to be a quality dude, and he's a little small.
But you know what? I take it back. I thought they went Savion Williams. They went Savion Jones out of LSU. Very different player. Very different. I thought they went back-to-back wide receivers. No, they went back-to-back edges because Q Robinson is kind of, in fact, Q Robinson, I like the tape. Late 4th rounder. He's kind of that designated pass rusher, but, it took you so long to get on the field and make an impact for Alabama, so that's weird. But anyway, it's the early rounds to do the heavy lifting in most of these drafts, and it's like I don't know.
The way I would put it was their day 2 picks of Harvey, Bryant, Jones. I would have liked all of them in the 4th round. Not any of them on day 2. Like
and they could have all gone around.
And I think they all should have gone in the 4th round.
Right.
In a running back, and I love Harvey. He could be rookie of the year, but there's so many running backs. You're using the 60th pick on him. I thought that was rich.
The New York Giants, and feel free to drop any draft classes on me that you want. New York Giants.
We'll do that all week.
Abdul Carter, phenomenal. Pick 3. Yep. You can kind of see it coming. I don't know if Jackson Dart is that dude. They traded up for him.
At least they didn't spend like what Atlanta spent to go get him.
True. They didn't have to dip into next year's first round. It was like 2/3 was it 2/3 they spent to get up?
Something like that, more or less. It wasn't that bad, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a Dart fan, but it wasn't that bad.
Darius Alexander out of Toledo. I'm not surprised he fell to the third round. He just stayed.
I love that pick, though.
I just don't think he was very good. So that, better in the third round than the second round, where some people had Darius Alexander. He just kind of stayed blocked for me. And Cam Scatterbo is just slow and like I don't know.
You're right.
I like the Bo pick, but
I like the Bo pick too.
Fall to the fifth round too. Is there something else going on there with him, because he should have gone a lot earlier talent wise? So they got value with Bo. Scatterbo, take him or leave him. Darius Alexander, take him or leave him. You're trading up for a quarterback that I think is not going to make a difference for you as a long-term starter, but maybe he does. So in the end, you got Carter too, which is the anchor of that draft. So it probably could turn out to be a good draft. It could go good, but I don't know. I just didn't love it for the Giants.
I think I liked it more than you, probably because I liked Alexander more. Anyone could have taken Carter, but he's still a good player. Scatterbo's more of a fictional character to me than a true every down back. Like I'm drafting Tracy ahead of him in fantasy all day long, but I do like the Mabal pick. I think he's a starting guard for them. I don't know why he fell. He could get a little stronger, but he's not for every scheme. But even Fadone's okay.
Just to be clear on Darius Alexander, there's some traits there that you like, but
yeah,
you shouldn't be, a fifth-year senior, 24 years old at Toledo and just staying against the Bowling Green guard one-on-one.
You should wreak more havoc than you did.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. Senior Bowl was good though.
Any other standouts for you before we go, Matt?
I love a couple little nuggets. I love that Houston got both Iowa State wide receivers, and frankly, they could have gone in either order, and I would have been fine with it. But not a ringing endorsement for Tank Dell's career, clearly.
Yeah,
I wanted to bring up
and high floor and ceiling for both those guys. Like they clearly want to have a good wide receiver group for their young quarterback, which I can get behind. I like that, but they threw an offensive tackle in there in between with Ursary as well,
which made me happy too. I don't love the players, but I love the approach of the Buffalo Bills. Corner, D tackle, edge, D tackle, corner. I mean, the defense isn't bad, but let's infuse it with guys. I'm not sure I'd ended up with the same names, but I like the approach.
I guarantee you, I don't have a source on this necessarily. The Bills jumped up and sniped TJ Sanders from the 49ers.
Oh, you think?
We took a defensive tackle a couple of picks later. They moved up again to get another defensive tackle in front of the 49ers and others in Deion Walker, who I'd like.
Yeah, I'm not a Walker fan.
I'm not either, but they were kind of just were like, all right, we're running out of nose tackles, so we're going to go get one of those guys because they got the 3 tech earlier. And obviously attacking the defensive line. Lanny Jackson, like him a lot better in the third than the second, so I'm okay with that pick too.
Same. And I'm sure we spent enough, time on the Steelers and Niners, but I do like your Niners did address the D-line so much. That's right up my alley.
Yeah, Niners draft is weird. But they attacked the line, and bully ball is back with Robert Saleh. It was like not only did they draft the defensive line, they drafted dudes that could stuff the run, like big, strong,
power
defending football players. But speaking of teams that drafted maybe 5th rounders in the 3rd round, they did that a couple times as well. The Niners did. Interesting draft class.
It sure. Seems like the Rams and Vikings that just didn't make many picks, which usually doesn't go well.
And every team that traded down won, in my opinion. So let's
especially this year, right?
Thanks
everyone got a future first one too.
Thanks everybody for making us your first listen. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. We're going to go team by team, division by division, breaking down every draft class even further. So make sure you stay tuned to Peacock and Williamson.